Across the world, thousands of ancient monuments stand in silence. Pyramids rising from desert sands. Stone circles standing against cold northern skies. Massive temples carved from mountains. Lines etched into vast, empty plains. They were built by different civilizations, separated by oceans, languages, and thousands of years. And yet, something strange appears when we begin to look closer. Not at the monuments themselves, but at their positions, their orientation, their relationship to the sky. Because again and again, archaeologists and researchers have noticed something unusual. Many of these monuments are aligned, not randomly, not approximately, but with extraordinary precision. Some align with the rising sun on the longest day of the year, others with the setting sun on the shortest. Some with specific stars that ancient cultures watched carefully night after night. Stonehenge in England frames the summer solstice sunrise. The pyramids of Giza align almost perfectly with the cardinal directions. Mayan temples track the movement of Venus. Angkor Wat in Cambodia mirrors celestial cycles in its architecture. Individually, each of these monuments tells its own story. But when we step back and view them together, a larger question begins to emerge. Why were so many ancient structures built with such precise astronomical awareness? Was it coincidence? Was it ritual? Or were ancient builders encoding something deeper into the landscape itself? The people who constructed these monuments did not have telescopes. They did not have satellites. They did not possess modern instruments capable of calculating planetary motion with extreme accuracy. Yet many of their structures appear to interact with the sky as if their builders understood celestial cycles with remarkable precision. Even more intriguing, these monuments often appear in locations that amplify the effect. Mountains, deserts, open plains, places where the horizon stretches far enough for the sky itself to become part of architecture, which raises another possibility. What if these monuments were never meant to stand alone? What if they were pieces of something larger, a system, a network, a pattern? Ancient civilizations rarely wrote their deepest knowledge directly into texts. They embedded it in myth, in ritual, in architecture, in stone. So the question becomes harder and more fascinating. When we look at pyramids, stone circles, temples, and megaliths scattered across the planet, are we looking at isolated achievements? Or are we looking at fragments of a much older understanding? An understanding of time, of the sky, of the relationship between Earth and the cosmos. A pattern that ancient builders saw clearly, but that modern observers are only beginning to notice. To modern observers, monuments are objects, structures placed on land, stone, brick, or earth shaped by human hands. But for many ancient civilizations, monuments were not designed only for the ground. They were designed for the sky. Ancient builders did not separate the earth from the heavens the way modern architecture often does. Instead, they treated the sky as part of the structure itself. A temple was not complete without the movement of the sun across its walls. A stone circle was not finished until the horizon framed the rising of a star. A pyramid was not only a tomb or monument, it was an instrument, a marker, a way of anchoring time itself into the landscape. To understand this, we must imagine a world without clocks, without mechanical calendars, without digital timekeeping. Ancient societies depended entirely on the cycles of nature. The sun determined the rhythm of the day. The moon marked the passage of months. The stars signaled the arrival of seasons. Agriculture depended on these cycles. Plant too early, crops fail. Plant too late, harvest disappears. Entire civilizations relied on the ability to track celestial patterns with accuracy. But the sky moves slowly, and human memory alone is unreliable. So ancient cultures began doing something remarkable. They built the sky into the earth. Stonehenge in England is perhaps the most famous example. At dawn, on the summer solstice, the sun rises directly above the heelstone, sending light straight through the center of the circle. This alignment was not accidental. The stones were positioned deliberately to frame the exact moment when the longest day of the year begins. Thousands of miles away, in the deserts of Egypt, the pyramids of Giza reveal similar precision. Their sides align almost perfectly with the four cardinal directions. Achieving that level of orientation requires careful astronomical observation. Ancient Egyptian builders likely tracked the movement of specific stars to establish true north before placing the first stone. In Mesoamerica, Mayan temples functioned as enormous calendars. At certain times of year, shadows formed shapes that appear to crawl down temple steps. A visual representation of a serpent descending from the sky. This phenomenon occurs only on specific days, marking the transition of seasons. And in Cambodia, the vast temple complex of Angkor Wat mirrors celestial patterns with astonishing scale. Its towers reflect sacred cosmology. Its layout echoes the structure of the universe as imagined by ancient Hindu belief. These monuments were not simply religious, they were observational tools. They allowed civilizations to stabilize time, to predict seasons, to organize ritual, to synchronize society with the movements of the cosmos. When we see these monuments today, we often admire their size, but their true genius lies in something less visible: precision. These builders were not only architects, they were astronomers, and they were embedding knowledge of the sky into stone, which leads to a deeper question. If so many civilizations used monuments to track the heavens, Why do their structures sometimes appear to follow similar patterns across the world? Was this knowledge discovered independently? Or were ancient builders observing something universal about the sky, something that naturally shaped the way they built? The pattern begins with the stars, but it may extend far beyond them. When historians first studied ancient monuments, they treated them as isolated achievements. Egypt built pyramids, the Maya built stepped temples, the British Isles raised stone circles, and civilizations in Asia constructed vast ceremonial complexes. Each culture, it was assumed, developed its architecture independently. Different people, different beliefs, different environments. And for a long time, that assumption seemed perfectly reasonable. After all, ancient civilizations were separated by vast distances. Oceans divided them, mountain ranges isolated them, entire continents existed without contact for thousands of years. But as archaeological research expanded in the last century, something curious began to emerge. Certain patterns appeared again and again. Not in the cultures themselves, but in how they built. Across different parts of the world, ancient monuments often share three striking characteristics: orientation, scale, and location. First, orientation. Many monumental structures across the planet are aligned with extraordinary precision. The pyramids of Giza face the cardinal directions almost perfectly. Stonehenge aligns with the sunrise on the summer solstice. Mayan temples track equinox shadows with stunning accuracy. And ancient Chinese imperial cities were carefully aligned along north-south axis to reflect cosmic order. These alignments were not decorative, they were intentional. Ancient builders were placing their structures into a relationship with the sky. Second, scale. Many of these monuments are enormous, not merely large, but massive, beyond practical necessity. The Great Pyramid of Giza weighs more than 6 million tons. Angkor Wat covers over 400 acres. The Nazca lines stretch across miles of desert. Such scale required enormous coordination, labor forces, engineering knowledge, logistics. Civilizations were mobilizing entire populations to build structures that served symbolic and cosmic purposes. Which leads to the third pattern: location. Ancient monuments are rarely built randomly. They appear in places that amplify their visibility. Open plains, high plateaus, sacred mountains, desert landscapes. These locations create clear horizons, essential for observing the rising and setting of celestial bodies. But when researchers began mapping the positions of certain monuments, some noticed something even stranger. Occasionally, monuments separated by thousands of miles seemed to follow similar geographic logic. They appeared along trade routes, near rivers, along lines of cultural exchange, sometimes even within similar latitudes. Now, this does not mean ancient builders were coordinating globally. There is no evidence of a lost worldwide civilization designing monuments across continents, but it does suggest something fascinating about how humans interpret the world. When different cultures observe the same sky, when they depend on the same sun and seasons, when they organize societies around agriculture, ritual, and time, they often arrive at similar solutions. The sky becomes their calendar, the earth becomes their canvas, and architecture becomes the bridge between them. So the pattern connecting ancient monuments may not be evidence of a hidden global civilization. It may be something even more remarkable, a shared human instinct. Across cultures and continents, ancient builders were trying to do the same thing. They were trying to understand the universe, and they used stone to ask their questions. But some monuments suggest that their understanding may have gone deeper than we once believed, because in certain places, ancient structures appear to encode knowledge that seems surprisingly advanced. When people first look at ancient monuments, what they usually notice is size. The scale is overwhelming. Massive blocks of stone stacked into pyramids, temples carved into cliffs, stone circles raised from the earth. But the real mystery of these monuments is not their size, it is their precision. Because many ancient structures appear to follow mathematical and astronomical principles that are astonishingly sophisticated. Take the Great Pyramid of Giza. For centuries it was assumed that the pyramid was simply a monumental tomb, built to honor a pharaoh, and it certainly served that purpose. But when researchers began carefully measuring its proportions, they discovered something remarkable. The pyramid encodes geometric relationships with striking accuracy. The ratio between the pyramid's height and the perimeter of its base approximates the mathematical constant pi. The angle of its slopes closely mirrors proportions later studied in classical geometry. Its sides align with the cardinal directions with an accuracy that rivals modern surveying. This level of precision would require careful observation of the stars and deep understanding of measurement. And yet the pyramid was built over 4,000 years ago. The Egyptians were not alone. In South America, the ancient city of Machu Picchu reveals similar sophistication. Many of its temples are aligned with the movements of the sun during solstices. At certain moments of the year, sunlight passes through carefully carved windows to illuminate specific stones. These moments were likely used to mark seasonal transitions, important for agriculture. Meanwhile, in Central America, the Maya developed some of the most advanced astronomical calendars in the ancient world. Their temples functioned almost like giant observatories, From certain platforms, priests could track the cycles of Venus, the moon, and the sun with remarkable precision. The famous temple of Kukulkan at Chichen Itza produces a stunning visual effect during the equinox. As the sun sets, shadows along the pyramid steps create the illusion of a serpent descending from the sky. This was not random architecture, it was planned, carefully, intentionally. The builders understood how light would interact with stone at specific times of the year. Even in Europe, ancient monuments show evidence of astronomical design. Newgrange in Ireland, a tomb built over 5,000 years ago, aligns perfectly with the sunrise on the winter solstice. For only a few minutes each year, sunlight enters a narrow passage and illuminates the chamber deep inside. The timing is exact, which raises an extraordinary possibility. Ancient civilizations were not only observing the sky, they were measuring it, tracking cycles, recording patterns, transforming the movements of celestial bodies into architecture. Stone became a record, a physical memory of time. But this raises another question. If ancient cultures possessed such deep knowledge of astronomy and geometry, how did they acquire it? Because long before telescopes and scientific instruments, these civilizations were already studying the heavens with astonishing dedication, and they were embedding what they learned into monuments meant to last for thousands of years. Perhaps these structures were not only symbols of power or religion, perhaps they were something else. Something quieter, something more enduring. They were knowledge, written not on paper, but in stone. Ancient civilizations did not see the sky the way modern societies often do. Today, we think of space as distant, cold, an endless vacuum filled with stars that have little connection to our daily lives. But to ancient cultures, the sky was not separate from the world. It was the world's mirror. The movements of the sun, the moon, and the stars were believed to shape the rhythm of life itself. Harvest seasons, religious ceremonies, kingship, even the fate of entire civilizations was often interpreted through celestial patterns. So it is not surprising that many ancient monuments appear to reflect the structure of the heavens. One of the most discussed examples is the famous Orion correlation theory. According to this idea, the three Great Pyramids of Giza may mirror the three stars of Orion's belt. When viewed from above, the relative positions of the pyramids resemble the alignment of these stars in the night sky. For the ancient Egyptians, Orion held deep symbolic importance. They associated it with Osiris, the god of the afterlife. In their cosmology, the pharaoh's soul was believed to join the gods among the stars. So aligning monumental tombs with a sacred constellation would have carried powerful meaning. Whether the correlation is exact or coincidental remains debated among scholars, but it highlights something important. Ancient cultures were paying extraordinary attention to the sky, and Egypt was not unique in this. Across the ocean, the Maya constructed cities that reflected celestial movements. In places like Tikal and Chichen Itza, entire temple complexes appear oriented toward astronomical events. Some buildings track the cycles of Venus, others mark solstices or equinoxes. These alignments allowed priests to maintain complex calendars used for agriculture, ritual, and governance. Even in ancient China, imperial capitals were designed according to cosmic principles. The layout of cities often reflected the perceived structure of the universe. The emperor ruled from the center, symbolically linking heaven and earth. Architecture became a way to express cosmic order. In this worldview, monuments were not just buildings, they were connections. Bridges between the human world and the celestial realm. By aligning structures with stars and solar events, ancient builders were embedding their understanding of the universe into the landscape. This is why many monuments appear carefully positioned relative to the horizon. The horizon itself becomes part of the design. It is the stage where the sky performs its daily and yearly cycles. Sunrise, sunset, the slow shift of constellations through the seasons. These movements were predictable, and predictable patterns meant knowledge. Knowledge meant power. The ability to predict celestial events could reinforce the authority of priests and rulers. But beyond power, there was something deeper. Ancient people were trying to understand their place in the cosmos. They built monuments not only to honor gods or rulers, they built them to align themselves with the universe itself. And in doing so, they left behind something remarkable. A record of how humanity once tried to connect earth, sky, and time into a single, meaningful pattern. At first glance, the similarities between ancient monuments can feel almost mysterious. Pyramids in Egypt, step pyramids in Mesoamerica, astronomical temples in Asia, stone circles in Europe, civilizations separated by oceans and centuries appear to have built structures that follow surprisingly similar principles. For some observers, this raises dramatic theories. Did ancient civilizations share lost knowledge? Did they inherit wisdom from a forgotten culture? Or were they somehow connected in ways history has not yet discovered? These ideas are fascinating, but the truth may be both simpler and more profound. Because there is something universal that all ancient civilizations shared: the same sky. Every society on Earth watched the same sun rise and set, the same moon cycle through phases, the same stars slowly move across the night sky, and those patterns are incredibly consistent. The solstices always occur at the same points on the horizon. The equinoxes always divide the year into equal halves. Certain constellations appear at predictable times of the year. These celestial patterns are not random. They repeat with extraordinary reliability. For agricultural societies, this reliability was essential. Planting crops required precise knowledge of seasonal change. If farmers planted too early, frost could destroy the harvest. If they planted too late, the growing season might be too short. Understanding the sky meant survival. So ancient civilizations began carefully observing celestial cycles, year after year, generation after generation. Over time, they accumulated detailed knowledge of the heavens. But knowledge alone was not enough. It had to be preserved. Remember, ancient societies did not rely primarily on written records. Many traditions were transmitted orally, and oral knowledge can fade over time. Monuments solved this problem. Stone does not forget. By aligning monuments with solar events or star positions, ancient cultures created physical reminders of celestial cycles. A temple aligned with the sunrise on the solstice becomes a permanent calendar marker. A stone circle pointing toward a specific star preserves astronomical knowledge across generations. Architecture became memory. A civilization could literally encode time into its landscape. This explains why similar patterns appear across the world, not because civilizations were secretly connected, but because they were solving the same problem. How do you measure time in a world without clocks? How do you predict seasons without written calendars? How do you preserve knowledge for people who may live centuries in the future? The answer was elegant. Use the sky, use the horizon, and build structures that align the two. This solution was discovered again and again by cultures separated by geography but united by necessity. And this is what creates the pattern we see today. A pattern not of hidden global coordination, but of shared human curiosity. Across the world, ancient people looked upward, and then they built monuments to remember what they saw. Modern society experiences time differently than most ancient civilizations did. Our clocks measure seconds, our calendars divide years. Our lives are scheduled in hours and minutes. But ancient civilizations often thought about time on a much larger scale. Years, generations, even centuries. For people whose survival depended on the rhythms of nature, time was not something abstract. It was visible. The slow return of seasons, the steady movement of stars across the night sky, the shifting path of the sun. These patterns repeated again and again with remarkable precision, and ancient observers noticed something important. Some celestial cycles were much longer than a human lifetime. Positions of certain stars change gradually over centuries. This means the sky humans see today is not exactly the same sky that people saw thousands of years ago. Constellations slowly drift. Star positions shift. Entire celestial patterns evolve over long periods of time. While ancient civilizations did not understand the physics behind these movements, they were extremely skilled observers. Over generations, priests and astronomers recorded changes in the sky. Small differences accumulated. Eventually they realized that the heavens themselves moved in cycles that stretched far beyond a single lifetime. This realization had profound consequences. If the sky moved in cycles, then time itself might be cyclical. Many ancient cultures adopted cosmologies based on repeating ages. In Hindu tradition, vast cosmic cycles known as yugas. These describe enormous spans of time where civilizations rise and fall. The Maya developed intricate calendar systems, tracking long periods called baktins. Even ancient Greek philosophers speculated about repeating ages of humanity. These ideas reflected a worldview very different from modern thinking. Instead of seeing history as a straight line, many ancient cultures believed the universe moved in great repeating. Rhythms, creation, growth, decline, renewal, and monuments played a role in this understanding. By aligning structures with celestial cycles, civilizations created markers that could outlast human lifetimes. A temple might stand for thousands of years, long enough to witness multiple generations of astronomical patterns, long enough to remind future observers where certain stars once appeared. In this way, monuments became bridges across time. They preserved knowledge that no individual person could fully experience. A single human life was too short, but a monument could stand through centuries, watching, recording, remembering. Perhaps this is why ancient builders invested so much effort into structures that seem almost impossibly durable. They were not only building for their own generation, they were building for people they would never meet. For observers living hundreds or even thousands of years in the future, people who would stand before those stones, look up at the sky, and continue the same quiet conversation between humanity and the cosmos. When we step back and look at ancient monuments across the world, something remarkable becomes visible. Not a single mystery, not a hidden message carved into stone, but a pattern that appears again and again across civilizations separated by geography, language, and time. Egyptians aligned pyramids with the cardinal directions. Mayan architects designed temples that interact with the sun. During equinoxes, ancient European builders positioned stone circles to frame the rising sun on solstices, and in Asia, massive temple complexes were constructed to reflect cosmic order. Individually, each of these monuments belongs to its own culture, its own mythology. its own political system, but together they reveal something deeper about the human mind. Ancient civilizations were not only building monuments, they were building frameworks for understanding reality. They were trying to answer the same fundamental questions, questions that humans still ask today. Where are we in the universe? How does time move? What patterns shape the world around us? Without modern science, ancient societies turned to the most reliable guide: the sky. The heavens provided order in a world that often felt unpredictable. Storms came and went, rivers flooded, empires rose and fell, but the stars moved with quiet consistency, night after night, year after year. This reliability gave ancient people something precious, a sense that the universe itself followed laws, patterns, cycles, and if those patterns could be understood, perhaps human life could be aligned with them. This is why monuments often appear at places where earth and sky meet most clearly: open plains, high plateaus, sacred mountains, locations where the horizon stretches wide enough to observe celestial movements with precision. These places became natural observatories, long before telescopes existed, and monuments turned those observations into permanent markers. But the pattern goes deeper still, because monuments also shaped society itself. They organized labor, they reinforced religious beliefs, they demonstrated the authority of rulers, and they created shared rituals tied to the movements of the cosmos. In this way, architecture did something powerful. It connected three layers of human experience: nature, society, and belief. The sky determined the calendar structured agriculture, agriculture sustained civilization, and monuments stood at the center of that system. They were not simply symbols of power, they were instruments for organizing reality. This may be the true pattern connecting ancient monuments. Not a hidden code, not a lost civilization, but a universal human response to the same cosmic environment. Across continents and cultures, ancient builders looked at the same sky and found ways to bring its order down to earth. Across deserts, mountains, forests, and plains, ancient monuments still stand. Some rise from sand, others sit quietly in jungles that slowly grew around them. Some remain intact, others survive only as fragments. But even in ruin, they continue to speak, not through words, through alignment, through orientation, through the silent precision of stone placed exactly where ancient builders intended it to be. For centuries, people have looked at these monuments and asked the same question: how were they built? How did ancient societies move such enormous stones? How did they organize the labor required to raise structures that still dominate landscapes today? These are important questions, but they may not be the most important ones, because the deeper mystery of ancient monuments is not only how they were built, it is why. Why did so many civilizations invest extraordinary effort into structures that interact with the sky? Why were temples aligned with solstices? Why did pyramids reflect cardinal directions? Why were entire cities designed to mirror cosmic order? The answer may lie in something simple. Ancient people were trying to understand the universe. Without modern instruments, without scientific models, they relied on observation, patient observation. Generations watching the sky, recording patterns, learning which stars rose before the rains, which solar positions marked the changing of seasons, which celestial cycles shaped life on Earth. And once those patterns were understood, they did something remarkable. They built them into the landscape. Stone became memory, architecture became knowledge, and monuments became messages carried forward through time. Messages not written in language, but in geometry, in alignment, in the quiet relationship between earth and sky. This is the hidden pattern connecting ancient monuments, not a secret civilization, not a forgotten technology, but something deeply human. A desire to understand the world, to find order in the cosmos, and to leave behind something that would outlast a single lifetime. Today we look at these monuments with satellites and scientific instruments, yet the questions that inspired them remain the same. We still look up at the sky, we still search for patterns, we still try to understand our place in the universe. And perhaps that is the most powerful legacy ancient builders left behind. Not the stones themselves, but the curiosity that shaped them, because the story of ancient monuments is not finished. Every generation looks at them again and sees something new. If you enjoy exploring the deeper patterns hidden within ancient history, consider subscribing to Ancient History Secrets. Here we explore the ideas, mysteries, and discoveries that shaped the ancient world, and continue to shape how we understand it today. Because sometimes the most fascinating secrets of history are not buried underground, they are standing in plain sight, waiting for someone to look a little closer.